This video is sponsored by Linode. Build your next application or website with Linode's next generation network. Linode lets you pay as you go, as you can fearlessly scale up or down at one of 11 global data centers. To get $20 towards your new account, visit linode.com/Traversy. Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video, in this project, we're going to build an application using Feathers.js and Express to build a real-time app where live streamers, coding live streamers, could have their viewers go to submit an idea for a project to code on stream. So basically we have a form here where they can enter an idea, like let's say build a real-time app using Feathers.js, and then your name, enter, and it's going to go ahead and just pop up on the screen for the live streamer to see, and it will pop up in real time. They don't have to reload the page or anything. So the actual functionality is pretty simple, but it's going to give you a nice foundation in how to do this with Feathers.js. And if you've never heard of Feathers before, basically it is a Node.js framework for building real-time applications and REST APIs. You can use it with Express and of course any database. We're not using a database. I mean, if I reload, this will stay here just because it's in memory on the server, but if I restart the server, this will go away. But you could easily implement MongoDB or Postgres or something like that. All right, so it gives you RESTful services with a real-time backend using WebSockets. So it's a really cool technology to get into. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to jump right into it. This is just an index HTML with some client-side JavaScript that's going to communicate with our Feathers.js server, which is actually running. I'll show you right here. We have RESTful services enabled, so we can go to localhost port 3030/ideas, and any ideas we submit are going to be in this array right here. Okay, and you can disable that service if you'd like. So let's jump into VS Code, and I just have an empty folder called livestream project ideas, and we'll start off by just npm init. We'll do npm init-y so we don't have to answer any questions, and that will create a package.json file. All right, now as far as dependencies goes, we're going to npm install feathers, which is going to be at feathers.js/feathers, and we're also going to install Express with integrations with Feathers, so we can do at feathers.js/express. We also need socket.io, so we can do at feathers.js/socket.io, and then I'm going to install Moment or Moment.js, which is just a package to deal with dates and times. All right, so those are the four things we need for this project for our backend. And we should see those dependencies pop up. Good. Let's just add a start script right here to run our application. So have this run node app. Let's actually change this to app as well. Excuse me. And then we're going to close that up and create our app.js file. Okay, so in this file, we want to bring in all of our dependencies for our backend. So let's do const feathers, and we want to set that to require. And we want to do feathers.js. Actually, I'm sorry, we want the at symbol here. So at feathers.js/feathers. And then I'm going to copy this down a few times. Then we need express. Okay, then we need socket.io. Socket.io, and then we need moment. And that's all the dependencies we need to bring in. All right, so the way that this works is we build what are called services, okay? And the services are in the form of a class, and we're only going to have one service, which is going to be called idea service, because that's what we're dealing with, our project ideas. So I'm going to just put a comment here and say idea service, but before we go ahead and build that, we need to do some initialization, just like we would do with a standard Express app. So let's say const app equals Express, except we're going to pass in here feathers. parentheses. All right, so we can integrate Feathers with Express. And then we just need to add some middleware. So we want to be able to parse JSON. So let's do app.use and say express.json. All right, and then we need to configure socket.io to socket.io real-time APIs. And we do that with app.configure. And we can just pass in here socket.io like that. Okay, another thing we want to do is enable REST services. So I showed you when I went to localhost 3030/ideas. In order to be able to do that, to have those RESTful API services, we have to do app configure and then express.rest parentheses. Okay, and then finally we need to register our service, which we haven't actually created yet, but let's say register services. We do that with app.use, and then the route, which is going to be /ideas. Obviously you could have multiple services, and then we just need to say new and then the name of the service, which we're going to call idea service. All right, so now we just want to be able to connect to a channel. So we have something called a channel, and we do that with app.on connection. Okay, so on connection, then we're going to have a function. Actually, we don't need parentheses because there's only one parameter, which is the connection. And then we just call app.channel, and we can call this whatever we want. I'm going to call it stream. And then we need to just do .join and then pass in the connection. Okay, so I'll just put a comment here. We'll say new connections connect to stream channel. Okay, now we have to make sure that all events publish to the stream channel. So we'll say publish events to stream, and we do that with app.publish. Okay, and this takes in a function with data as a parameter, and we simply just say app.channel again with the channel name, which is stream. All right, so now that we've done that, we need to listen on a port. So let's create a variable called port, and we'll set that to process.env.port. So we'll look at the environment variable. If not, then we'll use 3030. And then let's listen on that port. Now we also have to do this .on and then the listening event. So listening. Okay, and then we can pass in an optional function here where we can do a console log just to show that the server's running. And I'm going to use some backticks in here, and we'll say let's do real-time server running on port, and then we'll put our port variable. All right, so that should be enough for initialization. Now let's create our idea service. So up here we're going to have a class called idea service, and this is actually going to be pretty simple. We're going to have a constructor, and our constructors, we're just going to initialize this .ideas, which is going to be an empty array. Okay, and then we're going to have two methods within this class or within this service. One is going to be to find our ideas or to return our ideas, and one is going to be to create a new one. So we need to mark these async. So async find, and then we're just going to simply return this .ideas. All right, and then we need a create method. So let's say async create. Now this is going to take in some data from the client, so we want to pass in data, and then I'm going to construct an object called idea with an ID. Now you can use whatever method you want to create an ID. Obviously, if you were using a database, the ID would be created for you, but we're not, so I'm just going to use the length of ideas as the ID. Okay, and then text is going to come in from the client, so data.text. We have tech as a field, which will be the language, framework, or whatever of the idea, which will come in from data.tech, and then the viewer will come in from data.viewer. All right, and then I just want to add the time as well, so I'm going to take that idea object and add a time property and set that to moment.format, which is going to give us the current date and time, and I'm going to format it as just the time. I don't need the date, so we'll do H, so hours, minutes, seconds. So it should just give us the time and attach that to the idea object. All right, so up to this point, we just created a new idea object. Now we want to take the ideas array and push onto it the new idea. Okay, and then just return the new idea to the client. And that's it. So let's save this and let's clear this up and run npm start. And we have some issue. Oh, I have something running on. I have the one that I already showed you running on this port. So let me just quit that real quick and then I'll try this again. All right, so we get real-time server running on 3030. Now, before we start on our front end, we can actually try to create an idea from our server. So if we go down here, we should be able to do app.service, and we want to use the ideas service, and we can do .create, and in here we can pass in a new idea. We can do text, let's say text, build a cool app, and tech, we'll say Node.js, and viewer, we'll say John Doe, time. I'm just going to grab that. I'm going to grab this moment function up here for the time and put that in there. Okay, so if I save this and then restart the server, that should actually create an idea. So let's run that and just comment this out because we don't want to keep creating them. Let's comment that out. But let's now go to a browser. Well, not Postman. We could use Postman, but let's go to a browser and let's look at HTTP localhost 3030 ideas, and there it is. So we have build a cool app, Node.js, John Doe, it has the time. Good. So we know that our back end is all set. So now we want to start on our front end. So we'll close that up, and we're just going to create a new file called index.html. And what I'm going to do is just paste in all of the HTML just so you guys don't have to sit here and watch me write HTML. If you're following along, you can get this code in the GitHub repository that's in the description. But I will go over it, so I'll paste it in and just kind of go over it. So let me just make this a little smaller. So we just have inside the head, basic meta tags, link to Bootstrap. I am using Bootstrap for our CSS framework. And then I just have some classes on the body to make it a dark background. We have a very simple nav bar, no menu items or anything, just the header. And down here we have a container, margin top 5 class, and then a row with 2 6-column divs. So the first column has the form, so that just has a heading with a form, and the form has an ID of form. So we need to grab onto that within the JavaScript. All right, then we have some form groups with some inputs. First input has an ID of idea text. Second one is idea tech, and the third one is idea viewer. Okay, so those IDs are very important because we need to grab onto those within our JavaScript. Then we just have our submit button, and then in the next column we have a div with the ID of ideas, and inside that I just have kind of a hard-coded idea, which is in a Bootstrap card. Okay, so it's just, I just put the text right in. And then down here, this is really important. You need these 2 scripts. One is the Feathers client and one is socket.io. So in order for this to work, you need to include these scripts here. And then I just have our script where we're going to put our custom JavaScript. So let's save this, and I'm going to open this up with live server. You don't have to use live server or any server. You can open it, just the HTML file if you want. And you can see we have our form and we have our hard-coded idea that's just right in the HTML, just so you can see what it looks like. All right, so let's actually comment that idea out. So this class of card, which ends here, I'm just going to go ahead and comment that out. All right, so it should look like this. So now we can start to work on the JavaScript. So down in the script tags, let's see, we're going to go down here, and first thing that we want to do is set up socket.io. Okay, so we're actually going to create a variable here called socket, and we want to set this to IO, and then we want to pass in here HTTP localhost, and then your port, which I used 3030, so we want to pass that in there. Okay, then we want to initialize our Feathers app. So const app, and we can set that equal to Feathers. And then we want to register socket.io to be able to talk to our server. So let's say register socket.io to talk to server. All right, oops. And we do that with app.configure. And we just have to pass in here feathers dot socket IO, and just pass in here our socket. All right, so once we do that, now we can start to deal with our DOM. We need to be able to fire off a submit event on that form. So let's do document dot get element by ID, and we're going to get it by the ID of form. And we're going to add an event listener for the submit event. And once that's called, we're going to call a function called send idea. All right, so let's create that function. And this is actually going to be asynchronous. So async function send idea. And since this is a submit event, we want to pass in our event parameter and just call e.prevent default. Okay, because we don't want the form to actually submit to a file. And then once we do that, we want to get the data from the form, so from the inputs. So let's create some variables here. We'll do text, set it to document.getElementById, and remember that we have an ID of idea-text. Okay, we'll copy this down, and we're going to get idea-tech, and we'll call this variable tech. And then we also have viewer. Okay, so we'll get those DOM elements, those inputs, and then we're going to create a new idea. And the way that we do this is basically the same thing that we did in our app.js down here. We can call app.service, whatever service, in this case ideas, and then create. So I'll actually just copy this and paste that in, and let's of course uncomment it. And we don't need the time, because the time is going to get set automatically on the back end. So let's just align that up. And then this stuff, of course, we don't want just strings in here. We want the text dot value. So we got the input element here, but we want the value of it, so we do dot value. And this is going to be tech dot value, and then this is going to be viewer dot value. All right, so we'll create it, and then the last thing I want to do within this function is clear the inputs. So we'll just take text.value and set that to nothing, and then same thing with the other two fields. All right, so just what we have here, if I save this, we should be able to now submit an idea. Okay, it's not going to show in our user interface yet, but we should be able to submit it. So let's try it out. We'll say build real-time app, say Feathers and Brad, and suggest. Okay, so we don't see anything here, but if we go to our localhost 3030/ideas and reload, you can see right here, build real-time app. And it has an ID of 1 because remember the ID is going to be equal to the length. And we also have the time, which is generated with moment.js on the server. All right, good. So now we want to work on actually showing the ideas in the interface. So let's go under the send idea function. And we're going to have a function to render an idea onto the page. So let's say function render idea. And it's going to take in an idea object. And we're going to select from the DOM. So let's do document.get element by ID. And we want the ID of ideas. Okay, and then we're just going to do a dot inner HTML. Now we don't want to do inner HTML equals because then what will happen is it'll just have one idea and it will just replace it. So we want to append onto it. So we're going to do plus equals. Make sure you add that, and then some backticks. And then what I'll do is just grab up here the card that we have commented out, this whole div. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put that right in here, and then simply replace this hard-coded text with our template literal variable syntax, and we can say now idea.text, and over here inside these parentheses we'll say idea.tech, and then let's replace the name with idea.viewer, and then finally down here the time idea.time. Okay, so that's our render function. It's not doing anything right now. We just created it. Now the last thing we want to do is create our initializer. So let's say async function init. And first thing we want to do here is find ideas. So remember we have that find method on our service. So we can just say const ideas equals, and it's going to return a promise. So we want to do await app.service. Service we're dealing with is the ideas service, and we're going to call the find method. Okay, so that will find the ideas. Now we want to add existing ideas to our list. So we can just take the ideas from that find and we can loop through them with a for each, and we can simply pass in render idea. All right, now if I call init down here and we look at our app, now you can see that it's actually rendering this stuff. There's one more thing we have to do in order for the form to submit and have it show up in real time. Right now, if I submit it, it will get added to our ideas, but it's not gonna show up here in real time. There's one more line of code we have to do for that. So that's gonna also go inside the init. And let's say add idea in real time. So we just need to call app.service ideas, and we're gonna say .on created. Okay, so basically when a new idea is created, what do we want to do? And that goes in here, which is going to be same thing, render idea. Okay, so render idea just renders a single idea. And in this case, we're just looping through them all and rendering each one on the page one by one. And in this case, when a new one is created, we're then rendering it onto the page. So let's save that. And now we should be all set. So I'm just going to reload this. And let's try to add something here. So we'll say build static website with Gatsby, and we'll say Larry Jackson, And there we go. So now it gets added in real time. Okay, if I reload, it's still there. Now if I reload the server, if I go down here and I Control C and then restart the server and then reload, it's going to be gone because it's just in memory. However, you could easily, in your app.js, you could use something like MongoDB, and in your service, instead of just basically hard coding everything to memory, you could implement Mongoose or the MongoDB driver, or SQLize if you're using Postgres or something like that. So I encourage you to experiment with this. Maybe even add some authentication. Maybe you can sort the ideas, and of course, build a whole new app that's not ideas, but using some other kind of resource. But I think that's pretty much it, guys. I just wanted to show you how this works and create a nice little project. So hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video.